What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we are going to talk about a federal judge striking down an overtime rule, slashing overtime for a bunch of workers. We're going to dive into that article here in a moment, but before we do that, I want you guys to know here at the Local 26 jurisdiction here in the Local 26 area, on Wednesday is the EWMC Brotherhood Night. It's going to be at Tap Bar, so tap in at the Tap Bar for Brotherhood Night on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. This is at 101 MGM National Harbor, 20745. Come on out and find that solidarity, have those conversations, and participate in the EWMC Brotherhood Night happening Wednesday. Now, what I want to do is dive into this article from the National Law Review. Federal court strikes down the U.S. Department of Labor's overtime rule. This is by Corbin Carter, Evan Piercy, Michael Arnold of Mintz. This was from today. Let's see what happened. A federal judge in Texas has vacated the U.S. Department of Labor's final rule increasing the salary thresholds for the white-collar overtime exemptions under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and did so on a nationwide basis. In a sweeping 62-page decision, U.S. District Judge Sean D. Jordan of the Eastern District of Texas declared that the Department of Labor exceeded its rulemaking authority by attempting to raise the minimum salary for the executive, administrative, or professional and highly compensated employee exemptions under the FLSA. The DOL rule, which we previously wrote about, took effect on July 1st, 2024, and initially increased the minimum salary thresholds for the EAP exemptions from $684 per week, or $35,500 annually, to $844 per week, or $43,800 annually, and also increased the minimum salary threshold for the HCE exemption from $107,000 to $132,000 annually. Critically, these increases were only the beginning. The DOL rule would have raised salaries again on January 1st, 2025, and provided for further increases beginning July 1st, 2027, and every 3 years thereafter. The DOL posited that its new rule would have made approximately 4 million employees newly eligible for the FLSA's overtime protections. What this means for those of you who are not following along, the Department of Labor rule increased the threshold where overtime pay is mandated. So the way it was before, if you made $35,000 or less and you worked in excess of a full-time job, those excess hours had to be paid at an overtime rate. What that left out was salaried employees that are at $40,000 that don't get overtime and instead have to work 70 hours a week and just have to suck it up because you make 40 grand. So what they did was they increased the threshold to about 43.8 annually, and it was going to keep going up. But what that did was include a lot of people who before didn't get overtime pay because they were salaried workers and they crossed that threshold. What this judge did was threw that out. So all those folks that were starting to get overtime pay for working crazy hours have now lost that, and they're back to salaried work. And so basically they cut the wages of these people. All right, that's the effect of this decision. Judge Jordan's broad decision vacates the entire rule, including the salary increases that previously took effect on July 1st, 2024. That just happened this year, so it's not even like they got to enjoy overtime for a year. No, it's only been a few months. Judge Jordan explicitly held that the DOL exceeded the authority delegated by Congress by effectively replacing the duties test applicable to the EAP exemptions with a salary test. Referring to the DOL's new salary basis as a proxy characteristic, Judge Jordan held that the increased minimum salary thresholds effectively displaced the duties test for a significant percentage of otherwise EAP exempt employees, and thus exceeded DOL's authority under the FLSA. Likewise, Judge Jordan found that the automatic indexing mechanism, which was the increases to the minimum salary levels every 3 years starting in 2027, abdicated the role of defining and delimiting the EAP exemption by regulation and amounted to an attempt by the DOL to evade the procedural requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act by setting its rulemaking on autopilot. Again, this is just all you're hearing here is a judge who was placed in a position of authority to serve a certain percentage of our population, i.e. the business class. This rule was good for working people and elevated working people and increased wage. And so that's a no-no because it takes away from profits. And so the profiteers are like, no, you got to strike this down. And that's what happened here. Make no mistake about it. It's confusing language because it's meant to confuse. But the very simple truth is this judge was appointed by someone who was business friendly. And as a judge appointed by someone business friendly who is in that seat, he chose to do a business friendly thing and screw working people. Keep that in mind as we go forward. What happens now? Judge Jordan's decision makes clear that the January 1st, 2025 increases will not take effect as planned, and the decision retroactively nullifies those increases that took place July 1, 2024. In effect, this restores the EAP and HCE minimum salary thresholds to their previous levels, $35,500 annually for the EAP exemptions and $107,000 annually for the HCE exemption. While there may be appellate activity, any such appeal could be short-lived given the arrival of the Trump administration in January 2025. The new administration might support different salary thresholds. For instance, in 2019, the previous Trump administration issued a rule which shifted the weekly minimum salary threshold for the EAP exemptions from $455 per week to the current level of $684 per week, and it's unclear whether his second administration would support the now voided Biden-era thresholds issued in 2024. Employers who previously raised the salaries of exempt employees to meet the July 1, 2024 increase must now grapple with whether to keep employees at those salary levels. As part of that inquiry, employers should keep in mind the existence of state-specific salary thresholds in some jurisdictions that already exceed the FLSA threshold. For example, the minimum salary for executive or administrative employees in New York City is currently $1,200 per week, $62,400 annually, and is increasing to $1,237 per week on January 1, 2025. So here you have it, where once again, these choices that we make on these elections, they have consequences. And this is one of the consequences. They struck down an overtime rule and cut overtime pay for over 4 million people who were now eligible for overtime pay that will now no longer be eligible for overtime pay. This is the type of stuff that's tangible, that you can see, that affects people. This is working folks getting a wage slashing because elections have consequences. Kind of just is what it is. This is the environment that we live in. It's important that we educate each other and that we move forward with a collective idea of how we solve our problems. My name is Eric. You're watching Union Minded. Remember, the fight's not left and right. It's up and down. It's going to take solidarity to win always. Each one teach one. Get out there and reach one. And remember, there could be no union without you and I front and center. Peace.